Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Champagne, and this is Champagne and J.D. You know me, you know J.D. Fox, and you know our guest this week. He needs no introduction, but because this is just the kind of guy I am, I'm going to give him one anyway. Gino Buccola has worked with TVG, he's worked with the Elite Racing Network. He, of course, does the That's What G Said podcast, available where all fine and not so fine podcasts are available to be downloaded. He also happens to be one of my best friends in the game. Gino, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here, fellas. And I think Andrew has been joining me recording wrestling stuff for the last month and a half or so. JD, I'm going to have to get you on there for one of the old WrestleMania rewatches with us. So Andrew and I have basically been talking now for about 3 to 4 hours straight. So I guess we like each other a little bit. It's kind of strange.
A little bit, tiny bit.
I don't know which is stranger, that you guys talked for 3 or 4 hours and then chose to record this podcast, or the fact that myself and Andrew are wearing red shirts. I don't know which is.
It's pretty cute. I think.
Gino, where's your red shirt? Did Milo throw up all over it?
I was going to say either throw up, pee, poo. I mean, it could be any kind of a fluid at this point. So it was not able to be put on camera. It wasn't going to look all pretty like yours. But I did get the text about the red shirts. I'm sorry I couldn't come through with it.
Hey, we all have our little shortcomings and our little foibles. And speaking of shortcomings and foibles, you can't write segues like this, really.
Well,
I'm going to let JD take over this one as we recap Hawkesbury Cup Day, which, while being a profitable day for me, and we'll get into this in a little bit, it was also a very painful day. And you'll notice JD is having a very difficult time holding a wide smile off of his face, because the second this happened, he had the idea to do this segment. So I'm going to do my very best to sit down, shut up, and let JD guide us into these uncertain times. JD, go ahead.
I am going to say one thing. I'm going to give Andrew a whole bunch of credit, because he went 3 of 4 in the pick 4 at Hawkesbury last week. Megan Devine, who was our guest last week, went 2 for 4. I went 0 for 4. I had the big goose egg. And luckily for Andrew, he missed out in the first leg. So he went back and he punched his ticket again as a pick 3, and you hit it for over $200. So it was a great ticket. That's a 20-cent base wager. You did a great job, Andrew. But what you missed out on was about a $6,000 pick 4 payoff, and it would have been probably $1,500 to $2,000 if your horse hit. And, of course, we've got the last 400 meters of the race, and I've got at the 300-meter mark and the 200-meter mark, we're going to stop down, and I'm going to ask Gino some questions. That's
okay, because I didn't see – I know what happened, but I don't know the gist of the race, right? So I don't know exactly how it was finished. I just know this was a bad beat for Andrew.
I'm going to give a little bit of a gist as far as the handicapping angle that I used here. I singled horse number 10, who went off at 4-1. I believe was the second or third choice. Don't quote me on that. But my logic was lone speed in a sprint race, and I thought the horse was going to get out and not get caught. So you're caught up on that. JD, if you would like to roll that not-so-beautiful bean footage.
All right, so you can see Andrew's horse is way out here on the front end, hugging the rail, everything you want to be, in hand, no problems, looks like pulling away from the rest of the field. And we're going to stop down here at the 300-meter mark. And, again, we've got a stack of horses behind, but I can't tell you, which one of these is running well enough to actually make.
Nobody's moving. Nobody's moving.
Well, that's part of it. Is it's stopped down so we can talk about it. But
no, I mean, nobody's moving from the back of the pack is what I'm saying. I know it's frozen. But nobody's coming. Nobody's running well here except for the horse on the lead.
Yep. So we're going to roll it here in a second. As, again, Andrew's horse all alone on the lead. And you're feeling pretty good about this at this point, Andrew, correct?
I was jumping up and down, turning cartwheels.
Okay, so we're going another 100 meters. And nobody has made an inch of ground on this horse. And this horse does not appear to be stopping. I can't tell you, watching this race. And I had the horse on my ticket as well. I had a little more coverage than Andrew did. But home free. I mean, You don't see anybody that could possibly catch this horse, Gino, do you?
No. They're just all kind of going up and down behind. There's nobody that's separated themselves. It almost looks like the horse down on the inside, he's already he put that one away, who seemed like that was his biggest rival at that point.
So the one shifted out in the middle of the stretch, and somehow will get up and catch the 10.
Ow!
Oh, God.
And I'm going to hold here. We're going to watch this for a minute here and get the replay because obviously they were good enough. They found the one and were able to give the hero shot to them. But the replay of the race, even the camera operators were so set on the 10. You'll see a replay coming to the wire here in a second, and you're just going to see the 10. You will never see the 1 in this actual footage of the end of the race. The 1 is gone. The 1 is way to the right of the screen, and yeah, it's a still of the 10. So they didn't even show the winner at the end of the race. That's how much of a cinch it looked like the 10 coming for home.
I'm sorry, buddy. That was brutal.
Yeah, now here's the thing, and I'll conclude the story, and then we'll move on to Oaklawn. But I did play the pick 3, had a 7-1 winner in the first leg of the pick 3, second leg of the pick 4, 4-1 winner in the third leg of the pick 4, second leg of the pick 3. The last race of the sequence, I hit the all button, used them all. I didn't like the favorite. The favorite goes off at 6-5, spurts away clear by 2 lengths at the top of the lane, and a 20-1 shot comes flying up the inside to nail that horse on the wire. Now, if the favorite wins that race, it's a $30 pick 3. It's not an expensive pick 4 miss. It winds up paying a couple of $100, and we're not talking about this right now. The pick 4 with the 28-1 shot in the last leg, where I knew I had to hit the all button, paid $6,300 for a 20-cent bet. I believe there were only 3 winning tickets in all of North America with that sequence. It was brutal.
And that one horse, Gino, was 7-1. So it's not like it was an impossible long shot. It was just nobody had it in combination with the long shot in the last leg.
No, it was brutal. And it's one of those things where, and Gino, I think we've talked about this, you'd prefer to be very, very wrong
every time
to lose like that.
Every time, because you want to capitalize when your opinion's right. This game is hard. And so when you have a good opinion, and even if it's an opinion as good as, hey, you know what, I'm going to spread it in the last leg because I don't love the favorite, and what happens when you do, you catch a bum. Like, that's an opinion that you want to try to capitalize on, because how many times do we spread out and catch the chalk, right? And that happens all the time. We're always saying, go all, and we catch the favorite. So that's a bummer, because it just, the one thing that is, I guess, a little bit of a positive is at least you got some ammo back. And so maybe this is a situation where this weekend, some of that ammo from last weekend, you can turn it into a little bit more. And sometimes that happens where you just have to continue to stay alive a little bit and maybe and get through a day or two that you would have lost. That was probably a day that you would have lost, but you still were able to salvage it, and you get a little momentum for this weekend.
Yeah, and it was a case where I went to sleep 1 o'clock that morning. I was really angry. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning. Hopefully I'll feel better in the morning. 8 o'clock, alarm goes off. I wake up. The first thing I think is, nope, still really ticked off. But as you mentioned, I've got some ammo, and we're firing it back on Arkansas Derby Day at Oaklawn Park. If you have yet to look at this card, you need to look at this card. 14 races on the program Saturday at Oaklawn. They've split the Arkansas Derby. We're going to talk about the late pick 4 in just a moment, but one of the ideas that I had that we're all going to do is we're going to offer some value plays elsewhere on the program. Now, we use value with a little bit of an asterisk. We're going off of the morning line odds, and anyone that's followed Oaklawn Park of late knows that the morning line has been spotty. So we're hoping that we're going to catch somewhere close to the morning line price on a couple of these horses. We can't predict how the betting money is going to come in. All we can use are the resources that are allocated towards us. And due respect to morning line makers, nobody ever applauds morning line makers when they get it right. But as handicappers, we notice when they get it wrong, and especially when they get it wrong in some really big spots. And we're going to go into at least one instance where we think the morning line is just completely absurd. But for now, we're going to go into some value plays, and JD, you have worked overtime to ensure that all of us have relevant video, covered video, as we go through and as we talk about our horses. So I don't know who wants to go first, but I know I will go last because I know JD has something special cooked up for me.
Yeah, so I think as the guest, Gino, I think we'll go first with your value play, which is background in race 10.
So for me, I'm going to go to the 10th race, which is, if you want to play a late pick 5, you can do so right here. And I'm going to go to the number 12 Background. We're actually going to be looking at his race back in February, the race that he won when he broke his maiden going long right here at Oaklawn Park. And when you look at his first few starts, one thing I like to do with horses is go from the bottom up, not necessarily the most recent race, but start at the bottom. You can get an idea of their career and how things have unfolded for them. So we see him striking the front right here. This was a super impressive win. He wins by 4.5. And in his debut sprinting, he was really good. He was a fine third. He was only beaten a half length. He came closing late. He had some traffic trouble. Then he comes back following this win, and he's a really good third behind a horse named Tyshawn, who we're going to see in one of the divisions of the Arkansas Derby a little bit later on. And that horse was able to go gate to wire and really get the benefit of the doubt in a race that I don't think was set up very well for Background. So for me, I think Background, if you put a line right through the most recent start on April the 11th, which was the Oaklawn Stakes, that's a race where he's just in a little bit too tough. And if we're playing him off of his form prior to that, he's an absolute contender in here. I think this is a field that doesn't have any monsters. There's a couple horses I'm willing to include, but I look up and down at this race, and I think there's a lot of speed in here. You know, with horses like Prodigious Bay, Rushy, a couple of horses down on the inside, there's going to be some early pace as I'm outside of the box now. But nonetheless, for me, it's Background. If you're playing the late pick 5, I think you have to use Background. If you're looking at this from like a one race at a time individual standpoint, I think you have to play this horse if he's anywhere around 10-1 or so. That's like the fair value line for me.
And you know, it's okay that you are outside the box, because Background is some outside the box thinking. See what I did there is funny. On a serious note, and JD, I know you've got some thoughts as well, but Background makes some sense in this race. The Oaklawn Stakes was a weird race. Mr. Big News came from well back and wound up winning that race at a big price. That was over a very sloppy track. Hopefully the weather cooperates. Background, I do think, has a puncher's chance in there, especially coming off a big workout on April 26th.
Yep.
And I think Ginobili's going to burn money in that race too. So even if you're down to 10-1 on Background, I think it's going to play more like a 15-1 shot in the pick 4.
Yeah, you look at his race when he was behind Tyshawn too. He hopped at the start. He was 7th. He was about 7 lengths off, and he makes this big 4-wide sweeping move, but the top 2 had already separated. He was never going to win that race, but he showed a little something, and if the race shapes up a little bit differently, I think he's got a big opportunity here. And then if you're playing a late pick 5, if you can get started with a horse like Background, then you don't even have to really feel bad about, you know, maybe catching both Bafferts in the Arkansas Derby if they're races that come up short, because you already got the price out of the way with, you know, a $20+ winner here with Background.
And 15-1 on the morning line for Background, and I too am going to go with a 15-1 shot. I'm going to race 7 and the 12 Booty Tama, not just the best named horse that you're going to hear Vic Stauffer call all day on Saturday. This is the Arizona Bias horse. What you're going to see is the first race of the 3-year-old campaign for Booty Tama here. Going to bear out in the lane. This is still a very green horse, but a very talented horse. Won the 2-year-old Spring Futurity, which is the second biggest stakes race at Turf Paradise, and got an easy allowance score here. She's going to end up winning this race by 11 at 6 furlongs. She's been screaming out for more distance. Her first try at Oaklawn ended up in the slop, so I'm willing to excuse that effort here, and we'll give Booty Tama from the outside 12th gate my check mark, and hopefully coming up with a value close to that 15-1 morning line when it all is said and done.
I think you'll get that, JD, because the Baffert horse in there is going to take a lot, and I mean a lot, of money. So I certainly can't fault you for taking a shot there. And, yep, definitely an Arizona value play there. But Booty Tama's last race, again, coming over a very sloppy track, might need the lead in order to run best. Didn't get the lead that day. The third-place finisher's since come back to win. There's stuff to like there.
Yeah, and really, it's tough to say with the state of Arizona racing that, you know, probably the most impressive 2-year-old we had, male or female, hit the track at Turf Paradise or Arizona Downs last year is in a very mediocre allowance optional claiming event. So hopefully Hot Springs, Arkansas fares a little better in start number 2. And Andrew, you have a play as well on a second-time starter, so I couldn't find footage. Fairgrounds footage is very difficult to get to, but you like a horse in race 6.
and it burns, 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 the ring of fire. You asked for that, JD. By doing this, you asked for that. You invoked karaoke, Andrew, which no one has asked for at all ever. I hope you're happy with yourself. On a serious note, we're going to head to race number 6, and I really like number 7, Ring of Fire, as I'm sure you can guess by my horrible performance. That is Johnny Cash rolling grade. Wayne Catalano horses do not win first time out. They just don't. This one was 33-1 back in March at Fairgrounds. Ran a good third after showing a lot of early speed. Was a little wide on the turn that day. Goes second out, gets Florent Giroux, and goes sprint to route. Spites counts can do anything. Eddington on the bottom indicates a little bit of distance pedigree. I love the recent workouts. I think there's a lot to like in this race, and I think Ring of Fire is going to be the one that they have to catch. And bluntly, none of these other horses in here impress me all that much with their ability to close from behind. Ring of Fire is 10-1 on the morning line. I really don't think we're going to get that price. I hope we do. I really, really hope we do. But I think 5-1 or 6-1 is probably more likely. It's a big field, so you'll likely get some semblance of value. But even at 5-1, this horse hits me as a pretty big overlay and is a single in some midday exotics that I will be playing. That's horse number 7 and ring number 6, Ring of Fire. And hopefully it doesn't burn, burn, burn that Ring of Fire. That Ring of Fire. And hopefully JD has learned his lesson about getting creative.
No, I'm good.
I like that horse, Andrew. You're in some trouble though, because I actually have that one as well. And you mentioned the Speightstown. The dam was excellent going long. She was a multiple graded stakes winner going long. So this horse should have no problem stretching out. The only issue is that when Florent Giroux and I team up, we are about 0 for 6,256, I believe, something along those lines. But this is the type of horse where I don't think he has to really even think twice about what the game plan is or has to get cute with anything. There's not a lot of other speed in here. Let's just go. Let's just get out front. Let's just act like we're the best horse. We'll play come and catch me. We'll open up a couple lengths. And you know what? If we don't want to go this far, that's one thing. But I'm hoping that at the very least this horse has a couple lengths on the field early, because this is a horse who was like on the lead sprinting. There's no reason why he doesn't have a few lengths on this field.
Yeah, and Gino, just heads up for me, I think everybody has a jockey that they just don't match up with, and you land on one of their horses and you go, oh no. For my Uncle Bob, who unfortunately passed a couple of years ago, was Edgar Prado back when he was dominating the New York circuit. He was 30% in most races. When Uncle Bob was on him, it went down to 3. But for me, it's
all 70 that he lost, right? All those 70.
for me, it's Julien Leparoux, especially in dirt races. It doesn't match up well. You don't match up with Florent, JD. I'm sure you've got a couple, but I'm really hoping that Florent Giroux, who has really impressed a lot of people this winter with his ability to get out front on a couple of horses in big races, can do so again here on Arkansas Derby Day at Oaklawn Park. So hopefully a couple of price plays that'll enhance your bankroll for sequences like the late pick 4. You got to stick around for this one, folks. It starts in race number 11 of 14. We've got both divisions of the Arkansas Derby. It's a really cool sequence that also includes the Oaklawn Handicap and a race that is carded at 1 3/4 miles. All three of us took a look at this sequence, and we're really excited to be bringing it to you. We'll kick things off with race number 11. This is Division 1 of the Arkansas Derby, and look at those beautiful graphics put together by Mr. J.D. Fox.
Nice.
And a couple scratches early here. Again, we're recording on Thursday night, and we already know that Shooter Shoot and Wrecking Crew are both out of this first rendition of the Arkansas Derby, so keep that in mind when you're doing your handicapping.
Yep, still a field of 9, though. However, in the eyes of a whole bunch of people, it's a one-horse race. And the horse we're going to talk about a lot, is number 1, Charlatan. And I guess I'll go first since my graphic just popped up. I'm not going to get cute. Charlatan may, in my eyes, be a little bit overhyped. But if you look at any figures, buyers, time forms, Equibase, whatever, he can regress by 10 points and still win pretty comfortably. He can regress by 15 points, and another runner in this field will likely have to step up to beat him. I respect Governor Morris, who I think is a pretty cool horse that ran up against Tiz the Law last time out, but Charlatan just, to me, seems like way too much for this field. And given that I'm spreading in 2 of the remaining 3 races on the sequence, to me, this is a chance to single and move on. I wish I could get creative. Unfortunately for you value players out there, I can't do it.
I was going to get very creative because I actually had 2 horses on my ticket, and I was going to give a nice long diatribe about how I thought Wrecking Crew actually had a shot in this race. But unfortunately, Wrecking Crew already scratched out, and that saves you guys having me talk about a long shot for 5 minutes. But I'm taking the chalk here as well with Charlatan. I'm putting it this way. I think if you take Charlatan and place the horse in the Oaklawn handicap afterwards, I think that's still the favorite. And that's just to tell those numbers for Charlatan through the first 2 races of the career. But I know, Gino, you're actually too deep here in leg 1.
And I wanted to, the reason why, like, initially when I'm looking at this race, I'm thinking, like, I would love to be the zig when everyone zag guy and go against Charlatan, because everyone is going to be doing Charlatan. And this isn't even like do I think he's going to win respect, total respect for the horse. This is from just like a pure gambling standpoint. This could be a great way to make money. What hurt me and why I had to kind of call an audible in that approach was when Shooter's Shoot scratched. See, to me, he was the real key in this race because he's actually faced Charlatan before, and he broke on top of Charlatan when they raced against each other. He might even be a little bit quicker, like first step out of the gate, but and with Charlatan drawing the rail, that might have been a little bit difficult. If Shooter Shoot was able to break, cross over, and then Charlatan has to come from behind, maybe he's up on heels, he has to do something that he hasn't done. That was going to be my approach. The problem is now with Shooter Shoot coming out of this race, I mean, Charlatan can absolutely cruise on the front end from the rail. I just don't see who is fast enough to go with him. So the only thing that I will do is I'll include one other horse who I was really high on last time when he ran, and we were just talking about my good buddy Florent Giroux, and we'll give him a shout out here for Basin. He's not going to be aboard Basin this time, and I didn't think he gave Basin a very good ride, to put it bluntly, on April the 11th, when Basin actually was in that Oaklawn Stakes we were talking about. It's a sloppy track. He's making his second start of the year, and he actually breaks pretty well from the inside. And after he saves ground and kind of cuts the corner on the turn, he's in a perfect spot. He's in 4th. He's all alone. There's like nobody within 2 lengths in front of him. There's nobody 2 lengths behind him. You're drawing. You couldn't draw up a better spot with a couple horses battling it up front. What ended up happening from there on out was basically nothing. Nothing. He just sat on the horse. He didn't make a decision to go outside, to go really inside, to get aggressive. It was just sit. And when horses started to come from the back, it ends up putting Basin in this atrocious spot where he's inside, then he's in between horses, he shuffles back, he loses a couple lengths. You can see it in the running line because it's a weird running line where he literally loses a few lengths, he loses all of his momentum, and then he comes back again late, kind of grinds up in, picks up a minor replacing, but he never got a shot. He never got a chance. And in his first start coming off the bench, he was behind Nadal in that super impressive Nadal race where Basin actually kind of had some sneaky in-between trouble and ran pretty well in that race too. So I think if for some reason Charlatan doesn't like the rail, doesn't break well, if he gets torched by somebody else who wants to go out and push him and kind of change their game, I think Basin is the horse who gets the benefit. I think he might be the right horse in the right spot. I prefer him much more than a Governor Morris or maybe even a New Door or whatever other direction you're going to go. For me, I think this is absolutely Charlatan. If you're going to use another one, it's Basin. And I just want to mention one price. I didn't get to throw him on my ticket because I don't think he's good enough to win. But if you're playing like Andrew and like JD are and you're singling Charlatan, throw the 10 crypto cash underneath in some of your exotics. He's the type of horse who you want when you're playing a heavy chalk on top. And look at his dirt form. It's really not that bad. He had some trouble in the rush away from the rail. He was chasing Lone Speed and he came flying. I think he's a horse who can spice it up and maybe finish 3rd or 4th and help get your supers or your tries a little bit better.
So if anybody out there was expecting us to go against Charlatan, sorry. I understand that those out there really want us to take aggressive stands with wild horses. Gino did give out Basin as a potential fallback play, but the race runs through number 1 Charlatan, who, if the Kentucky Derby was run on Saturday and had the points to run, may well wind up the betting favorite. That's how good this horse is believed to be. He'll get a little bit of an acid test, but all of us seem to think that the 2nd division of the Arkansas Derby came up way tougher than the first. And for me, the race runs through Charlatan. If Charlatan doesn't win, JD and I are out. If Basin wins, Gino's sitting pretty. We'll move on to leg number 2 of the sequence now. This is the Grade 2 Oaklawn Handicap, a really cool race that over the years has been won by some really big name horses. We've got a field of 14 going 1.125 miles. Some really good older horses signed on here. You take a look at Combatant, the 4-1 morning line favorite, coming in off of a win in the Santa Anita Handicap. Tacitus, a very familiar name by my standards, coming in off of several impressive wins at Fairgrounds. Improbable going second off the layoff for Bob Baffert. My top selection, none of those horses. I'm going to take a stand, well, not really a stand, but my top selection is number 4, Mr. Freeze, who to me hits me as one of the best handicap horses in the country. I liked him a fair bit in the Pegasus World Cup. He ran a good second that day behind Mucho Gusto. He came right back and won a nice race at Gulfstream Park. Goes back to 2 turns for this one. I think that's his game. Now, I needed to go a little bit deeper than just that one, and not just from the sense of, oh, I can afford to do this because I've singled twice. Number 14, why am I blanking?
Improbable.
Okay, that's embarrassing. Yes, Improbable. For some reason, I had Opportunity in my head, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. That's not right at all.
On success, it's okay. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? We've been talking for, my goodness, about 3 hours between your podcast and this one. I think I'm allowed a little bit of slack on that one. But at any rate, Improbable comes in second off the layoff, and if you watch the Oaklawn Mile, he goes the overland route the whole way and winds up getting beaten late by Tom's Day Todd, who himself is a Grade 1 winner. I think he is set up to take a major step forward. I needed to use by my standards, even though it's a little bit of an unknown how he's going to take to Oaklawn Park, and I needed to use a couple of others here too. Number 6, Warriors Charge. I did reluctantly use number 7, Combatant, even though I think he's going to be a bit of an underlay. The price in this race, though, is number 13, Night Ops, who is a horse for course that's won 3 of the last 4 starts, 2 in a row at Oakland, including the Essex Stakes, over what I thought was a pretty darn good field. And the faster they go early, the better that one figures to like it. So if Night Ops gets home, we're dancing, we've gotten the price home, and things are a bit happier than since we had just gotten Charlatan home at probably about 3 to 5. So 60 for me in this one. I like Mr. Freeze. Improbable stands to improve, but there are others that I think you need to consider as well. And I feel as though that's a popular opinion because all 3 of us are going pretty deep. And I don't know if you can hear it right now, but there is a dog in the alley behind my apartment who is either voicing his excited approval or is saying we're doing it all wrong. JD, what do you think?
Well, I think we need to go in scaling up the race. So, Gino, Andrew was 6 deep. You're 8 deep here in the Oaklawn Handicap.
I was going to say, see your 6, Andrew. I raise you 2 more on top of your exact 6 that you're using.
Oh, I don't know if I can handle that.
Look at that. So we got, I'm using the exact same 6 that Andrew has, but I'm also throwing in the 2 and the 9. I'm actually going to make the 2 Trophy Chaser like a slight top selection just based on the price. I think he's got the right running style, and what I like is he looks like he's matured a little bit as he's gotten older. Before, if this was a year ago, he's the type of horse who I don't think could sit off the pace a little bit. He really wanted to go. Now, he might be able to break and secure a really nice spot down towards the inside, save ground, wait behind horses, and if he's around like 8 to 1 or so, I think that's a fair price. One thing that's a real talking point about this race is I don't know what's going to happen on the betting board. I do know that there's a couple morning lines that look to be a little bit off, but if you told me there were like 6 horses that were all around 5 to 1 or so, it really wouldn't shock me because, I think there's a couple that'll take a little money, but there's a lot of ways to go in here. I think Andrew mentioned most of them. So for me, Trophy Chaser, I will include Tacitus, who I generally don't, but because in the last leg and the way I've approached this pick 4 sequence, I'm kind of okay with just using everybody who I think's got a real big shot in here. Mr. Freeze has to be in that mix. Andrew, you mentioned Warriors Charge, who's got really good speed. If anyone has the opportunity to take this field gate to wire, it's probably him who's one-dimensional. I do like Combatant. I don't want him at a short price, but he absolutely fits off of his recent races with this group. You mentioned Improbable by my standards, and then Night Ops too. Glad you mentioned Night Ops because what I like about Night Ops, does he have a tough draw? Sure. Maybe he gets hooked a little bit wide. But if you go back and watch his win 2 starts back, it was the type of trip he's going to maybe have to sit in this race. He was wide all the way around the racetrack. He had no business winning that race. He hit the top of the lane, and it looked like, you probably feel like he's going to start backing up because he's lost so much ground. That was not the case. He ends up winning that race. He has not done a whole lot wrong lately. His numbers and figures fit. He makes sense in here. This is one of the more fun like older races that I can remember handicapping, because generally, like if this race was being run this weekend, maybe we'd get a couple horses in the Alley Sheba at Churchill. We wouldn't get this race like this. There would be horses at, Santa Anita, here, there, all over the place. That's been one of the real positives about, less racing, less tracks running, is that there have been a couple races at Oaklawn Park like this. There was a couple of the older ones for fillies and mares. We're going to see some decent 3-year-old filly stakes races on Friday that we wouldn't have seen races like this because they get all spread out. This feels like an old school horse race.
And Gino, I'm taking the all button here, the all button of glory. There's two things I can tell you guys about this race after spending hours on it. I don't trust Tacitus. Obviously, great run in the Saudi Cup. I don't know. Is that a fourth yet? Are we calling that a fourth place finish, or is that still?
I don't know. I think Saudi Arabia's got far bigger problems at the moment.
Yeah, I think so as well. But 3 pedestrian works after sitting in the quarantine barn. This is just a horse that's been burning money since the Wood Memorial. Maybe John Velasquez has the keys to unlock Tacitus, but that's just not a horse I can trust. The other thing I know about this race is that the morning line is terrible.
Yeah, if Improbable is 8-1 on the morning line, Gino, I will change Milo's diapers for a month.
I think Improbable would be 6-1 if Improbable scratches 30 minutes before the race and they forget to take Improbable off the tote. Also, looking at, by my standards at 9-2, obviously not a lot of. It's hard to have faith in that one after the last race because beat Captivating Moon and Chess Chief, not by a whole lot either, and those horses are 20-1 and 30-1 on this morning line. Bravazzo. Everybody bets Bravazzo. I don't know why, but they do. Bravazzo is not going to be 30-1 because Bravazzo outside of the Kentucky Derby has never been 30-1, and this is not the toughest field Bravazzo's ever been in. And then I think Mr. Freeze is probably going to go off as the favorite. So 6-1 morning line there, just coming off of that strong 107 buyer, career best and the best of anybody in this field. I just don't like the morning line here. So if you're looking at this race and you've got a good opinion, you might get paid, you might not. I don't really know where this money's going to go. As Gino mentioned, we could see 4 to 5 horses at the 5-1 range. I just know that I don't have a strong enough opinion anywhere on this race, so I just have to punt and take the all button.
And this is definitely a race where we're going to get involved in the pick 4s and the pick 5s and stuff. But this is a race where save a little bit so you can play it individually, because there's going to be a horse or two that gets forgotten about, right? We've talked about how many in here can win. If you're looking at this race and maybe it's maybe it's Warriors Charge, or maybe it's someone is going to get forgotten about and people are going to kind of gravitate elsewhere, and you're going to be looking at least 1 or 2 horses in here that are really, really nice value. And final thing, that Spider-Man gif that's out there where the Spider-Man, they're pointing at each other and they're looking at each other. Is that Tacitus and Improbable? They're kind of like, right? They're kind of the same horse to me a lot of the time. It's like they remind me a lot of each other, both like super talented, but they just don't, whether it be an excuse or a bad trip or some trouble, they never seem to get it done on the big day. I think it's really funny when they hook up against each other here. And to me, they just kind of remind me of the same horse.
There's a Family Guy skit out there with the 100-meter dash for runners afraid of yellow tape. That's what horses like that constantly remind me of. They're going to run second. They're going to run third. They're a dream to own. They're going to make somebody a lot of money once breeding deals come into play, because those horses more often than not turn into pretty good sires. But you get them in a race situation and you want no part of them at 2-1. That's for darn sure. So we're all going very deep in leg number 2. And if Charlatan wins, well, JD, you'll be halfway home. And I like Gino and I's chances as well. As we head into leg number 3, this is division number 2 of the Arkansas Derby. Note the scratch of the ultimate hunch play for life for me, number 2, Saratogian. Having said that, the morning line favorite is number 5, Nadal, who was out for Bob Baffert. King Guillermo won the Tampa Bay Derby. Silver Prospector won a race earlier in the Oaklawn meet. And then you have Wells Bayou coming in off of a win in Louisiana. I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the first Arkansas Derby leg, and I'm going to bet on Bob Baffert. As unfashionable as it is, I am singling both Bob Baffert runners. To me, Nadal's effort last time out was as freakish as anything we've seen from any 3-year-old at the stakes level. He put up really fast fractions over a very sloppy track. Now, we don't necessarily know what he beat that day. It was a bomb that came running late to be second. Having said that, I can't back King Guillermo in this spot. I just can't. Mm-hmm. What happens at Tampa sometimes stays at Tampa. And we've got some escapades with the morning line here, as Silver Prospector actually beat Wells Bayou earlier on in the meet. Wells Bayou is the 7-2 third choice. Silver Prospector 10-1 off of a race that if you toss fits with these, I don't think so. And speaking of which, if I was going to use a second horse, and a horse that I may very well hedge with in some doubles and exactas, it would be Silver Prospector, just based on the mindset of there's a fair amount of early speed in this race. Maybe the race falls apart at Silver Prospector, comes running late at a bit of a price. But I just can't go against Nadal in this spot. I think he is freakishly talented, and I think he's definitely the one to beat. He will not be 5-2. He will most likely be 7-5, 8-5, somewhere in that range. But at any rate, whatever price he goes off at, he seems like the horse to beat.
And I agree that Nadal definitely is a must-use and probably the most talented horse in the field. I just am curious about the pace setup and Wells Bayou being on the outside and crossing over and really getting into that battle early with Nadal. I really like Finnick the Fierce here. I think Martin Garcia really unlocked the keys to this horse last time. You look at the 2 wins that this horse has had, and it's been sitting up front right off the pace, able to see what's ahead of him and strike. This horse does not want to pass horses. This horse wants to pass 1 horse, maybe 2 horses. I think if the pace is insane up front, I really think Finnick the Fierce, if he could stay out of his own way, which has also been a problem in some of these races. But with Martin Garcia on board, last time out in the local prep, obviously crossed the line second, got brought up on the DQ. I do think it's a strong value play at 15-1 morning line. I don't think we're going to see that come post time, but I do think based on the potential speed duel that Nadal's going to be in, Nadal could very well be the best horse here. And the other thing I will say is if Wells Bayou crosses over and sets easy fractions, it could be lights out, game over. But I don't have enough faith in that horse being quicker than Nadal. So I'm actually, even though I think Wells Bayou has a shot in this race, I'm going to leave off the ticket, and that might come back to haunt me. And I know that's a horse, Gino, that is actually on your ticket here in Lake 3.
No. No Wells Bayou for me. No, but I do have a couple others with Nadal. But I respect the hell out of Nadal. I mean, he is right now. I have him in our little fantasy horse racing league that we play in, Andrew, and he is I think my favorite of the 3-year-olds that I've seen, and because he fights. He's not like one of those real flashy horses who wins by 10, and then we have to say like, well, he got an easy trip and this and that. In his last race, and the only kind of I guess thing that I'll piggyback your point, Andrew, is that the horse who was a big long shot who was second. And I think the reason why is because Nadal fought everyone else off before that. Like, there was nobody left. He put away the speeds early on who wanted to go with him. No Parole and American Theorem, who was battling, and No Parole set off. So then he puts them away. And then you get like the next flight of horses that come after him. It's Silver Prospector, and it's it's with the 3 Technique, and it was kind of Basin that was in that mix. And then he puts them away, and then it was there were like 2 hopeless long shots that start coming late because they're the only ones that he hadn't put away yet. So very rarely do you see a race where it's like a horse can almost get challenged by 3 different groups of horses and put them all away. He rebroke multiple times. He's still figuring it out. This is a really cool horse. He's really fun. But I will, just like what JD was saying, with the presence of a horse like Wells Bayou, who I respect, and I think he's really quick, I'm not going to use Wells Bayou, but I think he could be a real nuisance in this race for Nadal. So the horses that I will include along with Nadal are a couple that I'm hoping can sit. I really like the 9 a bit in here, Tyshawn, who he was 3rd in that race behind Farmington Road, the Oaklawn Stakes, and he was actually in front of Basin that day on April the 11th. He had a good start. He kind of sat back 4th. He was 3 lengths off, and he made an early move. He took the lead that day. He just moved a little bit early. It was his first time going 1 1/8. He was in the slop. He was traveling well. I think with a different timed ride, he's right there late with Farmington Road and Mr. Big News. We know he has speed. I think he may have progressed a little bit off of the big race when he won and broke his maiden when he won, and he won for the second time a couple starts back in that optional 80 on March the 14th. But I think he's going to sit. I would love for him to sit off. And then if it's crazy time, let's say maybe Wells Bayou, Nadal, Tyshawn even, they all hook up front. That's where Farmington Road comes into play because he probably wins the race if he's able to straighten up late. He was a little green in the lane when he was really rolling, and he kind of rolled right up onto the heels of the horse who was in front of him, and that might have been the difference between winning and losing that day. So I feel like from a pace perspective standpoint, Nadal maybe is the best. He might be either on the lead or sitting close. If it's not Nadal, maybe Tyshawn sitting behind him. And then if it's not him and it gets all chaotic, then I'm going to go for a horse who can close from the clouds. And so I feel like I have this race pretty well pegged from a pace perspective.
There's a lot going on in this race. And Gino, you mentioned Farmington Road. I liked that horse two-back. I liked that horse last time. I am not playing that horse today. And you know what that means? Yep. It means I'm putting Farmington Road straight into the winner's circle. If you hit this pick 4, you're welcome.
Thank you.
It's what I do for the people I like.
And you guys, obviously, the 3-year-olds, these very classy 4-year-olds we're talking about, this is my race. A mile and 3/4, $50,000 starter allowance. This is where I can sit here on a full field of 18 or 14, and I can really dive in and give you guys some thoughts here because this is very interesting. You're obviously not going to see a mile and 3/4 race on dirt very often. You're also not going to really see that race outside of, the marathon is still a Breeders' Cup race, I think.
Brooklyn? Yeah, do we get
sort of. Yeah, it's a grade 2 on the Breeders' Cup undercard, but it exists.
And really, I think here I've got some strong opinions on 2 horses, and I don't even think you necessarily need to look at the past performances to see 2 standout horses here. I'm going to take the only mare in the field, and I'm going to take the 10-year-old gelding in the field, and they're really, I think 2 standouts in this race. So when we're looking at the 12, She Might Tell. That's my top pick. 5-year-old mare running against the boys. 2 things going for her: 1-0-1 lifetime, 3 starts at Oaklawn Park. And she's got a win in her only try going 1.5 miles. Okay, it was in September. Okay, it was at Balterra. Okay, it was on turf. But at least she won at 1.5 miles. To give you a sense of how little distance we have in this race and horses that I'm running. She Might Tell is one of 2 horses in this field, along with the 10 Wild About You, that has run at least 1.5 miles. Those other horses have combined to run 334 races and have never run at 1.5 miles or longer. So I just have to keep it very, very simple. Wild About You, 10-year-old gelding, has ran 63 times, has ran at 1.5 miles 10 times, and has run 1.75 miles once. It was a $7,500 allowance race at Oaklawn Park, April 16, 2016. What did this horse do? This horse won by 11. I really think that these are the 2 horses that I can tell you can go the distance and can pass other horses. I think we've got a lot of mile types that are going to be out there gunning it, setting some early fractions, and I'm looking, when I'm handicapping this race, for horses that can pass other horses. Another angle here for She Might Tell, and this is when I get into the absolute crazy with the cheese whiz time. Ooh. Coming off of a claim, TK Stables basically are getting back into the game. They've taken a 3-year kind of hiatus from the game, but they mainly run out of Louisiana. I think this is actually going to be like the Louisiana Downs horse. If Louisiana Downs can start their season, it would have started on Monday. I think there's a lot of long turf races carded at Louisiana Downs to start their thoroughbred meet normally. I think that was the idea here with this claim. But you've got a horse who's fit, and you've got the distance that you think the horse is going to like. So off the claim, I also like She Might Tell being put in this spot, even if it's against the boys here. So I'm going 2 deep, 10-12. So my total ticket is $56. And Andrew, I do have to see if you're still with us here, because your video is just excellent here. I don't know. Can you?
Oh Jesus! No, I'm still here. I had the past performances up because I was very, very interested in what you had to say. Now, some would say that right now I've never looked better. Some would say that this is as good as I have ever looked. So you know what? We're going to roll with this for as long as the video will tell us to roll with it.
Whatever you're doing, keep it up, my friend.
Thank you.
You
I
wear it
appreciate
well.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as you can see, I don't have a clue. This is a mile and 3/4 race.
This is perfect.
Now, last year, the number 11 in your program won this race. That horse has looked horrible, absolutely dreadful in 2020. You look at the horse that you like, JD. Yes, this horse was very impressive at a mile and 3/4 many years ago. It's 10. I have no confidence in any runner in this field. Absolutely none. I have as much confidence in any runner in this field as I do of my video coming through loud and clear.
He loves chaos.
Yes, yes, I do. As you can tell, I'm running towards this. And you know what? If I get the first 3 legs home with both Bafferts and maybe a little price in leg 2, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to relax. I'm going to drink my Arnold Palmer, and I am going to enjoy watching horses who are not bred to go a mile and 3/4 tire themselves out and hope like hell we get a price home. And so I'm hitting the all button of glory in here, and I'm hoping this ticket works out better than the ticket that I played last week that singled in the first leg, ended with the all button of glory, and wound up, hosing me out of several $1,000s. Now, I'm choosing to believe that this video you're seeing right now is an omen. Mind you, full disclosure, just a little look behind the curtain here. I'm running on a 2014 MacBook Pro that is definitely showing its age. If any of you out there have any brand spanking new Apple laptops that you'd like to donate, I'll send you my Venmo and we can work something out. Having said that, JD, you're going too deep. Me, I'm going significantly deeper. Gino, tell us what you're doing.
I'm going to go too deep also. I do think and depending on how you're approaching the ticket, right? For me, there were 4 or 5 horses that I were able to kind of narrow it down to. I did think the 4 and the 5, they're very logical. They make a whole heck of a lot of sense. I'm not going to talk you off of them. But I'm looking, the way that my ticket is built, I have both of the Bafferts. I have a couple prices in the races around them. I don't want to go too deep. I don't want to go very deep in this race, because if I put in a ticket that's $70, $80 and then we get both Bafferts home, then we're already looking at a chance where it's we're not going to make a whole lot on this ticket maybe if we catch another one. So I don't want to spend too much. So let's just use 2, the 1 and the 10. I like the 1 a little bit, Dangerfield, in that I think he'll be able to save all the ground from the inside. I don't think he's going to be too far out of it. And if you like horses like Carlos Sixes and Magic Val, I think Dangerfield. Oh, there he is. He's back. Respect, folks, as we talk about Dangerfield here. I think Dangerfield sits the trip. I think he saves the ground. And the race against Carlos Sixes a couple starts back, he might have been a little bit better that day. I think he had a legitimate excuse. So saving all the ground, Dangerfield from the inside. And then the other horse that you mentioned, JD, the 10, Wild About You. I'm looking at Wild About You, and it's easy to find that this is, probably one of the most consistent horses when it comes to these longer distances. We have a horse with multiple wins at a mile and a half. We have a horse who's won at a mile and 3/4. And Andrew's right, probably not in the greatest of form as of late. But what I do like about the last start, I think it was a little bit sneaky. He actually had a good start, but then he didn't really go on with it. It was like the absolute plan to be 15 lengths back, which I don't get. Sometimes just being 10 lengths back is fine. You don't always have to be dead last, behind every horse or so far back. Just get a little bit closer. That was what frustrated me about this one. Maybe he was outrun for his first start in a few months, but he didn't have to be that far back. He kept to the inside, and he actually closed pretty well. Pretty well. It's a little bit better than it looks on paper, and now he's going to stretch out a little bit. So he owns a major advantage over a lot of these who we don't know. As you said, Andrew, we don't know if they want to go this long. A lot of them aren't bred to go this long. So I at least want to use one of the horses who I know will have no problem going this long. I just hope, my concern with Wild About You is I hope he doesn't get outrun. Sometimes in these marathon races, 1 or 2 horses go, everybody else sits patient, and it's just whoever got out front can take them as far as they want. So that's why I'll use Dangerfield, who I'm expecting to be pretty close from the inside. He doesn't have to be way out of it. I mean, this was a horse at one time who they had really high expectations for, Dangerfield. So for me, we'll close it out with 110. I wouldn't talk anybody off using the 4, the 5, or the 12, who else JD has. But for me, I'm going to try to go against some of the chalks in that last race, and let's get I'm going to demand value in this final race.
I certainly get where you're coming from. And before we go too much further, just as some background for this is a race that Oaklawn cards every year as the last race on the last day of their season as sort of a thank you to the local horsemen. And if you look at the barns that are entered here, you're not going to see a lot of huge names, but you are going to see names who, without them, some races may not have filled. This is a thank you to them, and it spotlights some pretty cool horses. We kid about a horse that's 10 years old. We kid about horses who a lot of people had high hopes for at a certain point, but this is pretty cool. I love what Oaklawn does here. Having said that, not an easy race to handicap. You can go a lot of different directions with a race like this. You can go too deep like JD or Gino, or you could go like Pixelated Andrew and hit the all button.
Al's bigger brother.
I think Frozen Andrew has decided to make an appearance. So we're all good here. We're all having a lot of fun, especially JD's system. And no, JD, I don't want to let it go or build a snowman.
Okay, I do want to say one thing. I want to bring the field up real quick. I just want you guys to look at the breeding states. Okay, first page, Kentucky, Louisiana, Kentucky, Florida. Okay, second page, this is when things get fun. We've got a New Mexico bred in here. We've got a Kansas bred. Just like me, I'm a Kansas bred.
Look at that. We don't see many of them.
I'm rooting for the 11. It's a Kansas bred that's running in a race that's not a Greyhound, and now not a Greyhound having to ship someplace else. So
Andrew's fine with the 11 with that all button. He doesn't mind.
Yep, and that's the horse that won this race last year. It's just tough to endorse that horse given the recent form. So you take a look at our tickets. They're all about the same amount of money, but we do take some pretty different approaches. Now, we all use Charlatan, we all use Nadal, but there's plenty of room to get a price home in this sequence. However you want to play this sequence, the important thing is that you get involved on your ADW of choice. Again, this sequence on Arkansas Derby Day starts in race number 11. It includes both heats of the Arkansas Derby as well as the Oaklawn Handicap and that really cool 1 3/4 starter allowance race that also happens to be a devilish race to handicap. So once again, our tickets are up on the screen, and hopefully when we bring you back, I am neither pixelated nor frozen, but, I see myself. We're all okay. Once again, live to tape here, folks, and I am running towards the chaos. I am embracing the chaos, and JD, speaking of chaos, I'm going to do something completely outrageous, and I'm going to let you drive the conversation here on our Go Home segment.
Okay, I will say that as the the spiritual advisor of this podcast is what I would like to call him. He has a book called Chaos Creates Cash.
Controversy creates cash.
Controversy creates cash. Okay, fine. I was trying to make the ultimate segue here, but we do the 3-act play. Gino, it's the Eric Bischoff trope, and we love it here. So our third act this week, you guys just have been going through retro WrestleManias. I know we've kind of had a chance, working from home and doing things. We've had a chance to kind of dive in and find some older wrestling or maybe some wrestling that we've missed in the past couple years. So I wanted to give everybody an opportunity for those looking for something new to watch that maybe have, exhausted Netflix and in certain cases exhausted the first pages you see on the WWE Network. If there's something out there that you think everybody should watch, and I think because I'm driving the conversation, I'm going to start with Andrew because that seems fun.
Okay, well, your timing on this is pretty good, JD, because I just recorded a podcast with two of my friends, Gino Buccola and Darren Zaccali. We took a look at WrestleMania 8 from the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we had a lot of fun looking at that. We've had a lot of fun looking at a lot of retro WrestleManias. We've looked at WrestleManias 3, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 13. We'll be looking at WrestleMania 14 next week. It's been a lot of fun, and for those of you who don't know, my Thursday nights consist of grabbing a quick dinner after work, doing Gino's podcast, and then coming here and doing this one. So that explains the improbable mishap where my brain, like Bobby Heenan's monitor, suddenly went black. So at any rate, WrestleMania 8's a lot of fun. It's got a really cool Bret Hart-Roddy Piper match that is my favorite Bret Hart match of all time. It's got Ric Flair and Randy Savage. It's got the return of the Ultimate Warrior. And it's got a couple of other really cool things from a historical perspective as well. Gino, it's been a lot of fun doing that, but that's not been the only WrestleMania that we've taken a look at.
No, and For me, if you're talking like recent, I'll give you 3 different ones to go back and watch. 3 different things. The first one, WrestleMania 30. To me, that was one of the more recent ones that was really good. You got the story with Daniel Bryan. He's got multiple matches throughout. The fans were just so into that show. It was a great one. Absolutely loved that show. The yes chants all over. Great way to end. So of the newer, more recent Manias, that's one of my favorite recent ones. A couple shows to go back and watch. How about Royal Rumble 92? With Ric Flair winning the title, Bobby the Brain.
Oh, New York, baby! Woo!
Unbelievable on commentary. It's not fair to Flair. It's not fair to Flair all throughout. And then one of my own personal favorites, King of the Ring 93. It was when they brought the King of the Ring back, and this was a show that they basically built around Bret the Hitman Hart to kind of build him back up after he had just lost the title to Yokozuna in that weird WrestleMania 9 stuff. But Bret has a couple really good matches on the card. It's a lot of fun. There's a hidden gem in there with Mr. Perfect. That is excellent. He has a good match with Razor, and then he closes it out when he's like selling against Bam Bam Bigelow. So that's a fun one to go back and rewatch too. So Royal Rumble 92, King of the Ring 93, and then we skip forward to WrestleMania 30.
And now for something completely different. I'm going to say go and binge NWA Power on YouTube. Really,
Great.
studio wrestling, and it has returned to Atlanta. It's been interesting where they left off. They're kind of in stasis. They had things that they recorded that they just have not chosen to play. But really great first season, and the second season's been unwinding really well. So NWA Power's been a great a great vehicle and something that's got a little bit of everything. So, you're going to find something you like in there, and you're going to see some old school. I mean, you're going to see the Rock and Roll Express. You're going to see some things that take you back, but you're also going to see some new talent, and you're going to see Nick Aldis, who I think might be the most underrated performer in wrestling. So I would recommend NWA
Love
Power.
me some Eli Drake. Eli Drake is great on the mic, too. You'll see some familiar faces in there, folks that you remember from WWF or maybe TNA or from some of the other major promotions, and it's good. It's just very old school, reminds you, it gives you that old school feel. Tim Storm has been a really fun character that they built over the last couple of years, and they've done a good job with a different approach. Like, that's what you have to do in wrestling. You can't try to do what the WWE does and just not have the money and just put on like a lesser show. If you're going to try to do wrestling nowadays, you have to go with a different approach. Lucha Underground did something like that. Power does that too. So for me, I completely, I love it. I love throwing on Power on YouTube for an hour and catching up. It's a lot of fun.
Lucha Underground's first couple of seasons were a hell of a deal. If you've got an hour, find the Aztec Warfare match from season 2 where they introduce Matanza. Rey Mysterio makes an appearance. It's really cool. And for my money, that was the creative high point of Lucha Underground. They took a break in the middle of the 3rd season, and that killed a lot of momentum that show had built up. Unfortunately, it went into hiatus at the end of season 4, likely because that business ran out of money. But at any rate, there's a lot to watch out there on the WWE Network and elsewhere for those of you who are into the finer things as we are, including things that happen in a squared circle that are scripted and or predictable, what have you. It's a lot of fun, and that's really what we're all about here. We started this because we didn't have any idea what the future held, and we just wanted to have some fun on a weekly basis. We've built this up to where we're bringing guests in. We do still have the occasional technical snafu from time to time. See also Pixelated Andrew, Frozen Andrew, and audio out of sync Andrew, but understand that we're working on it and we're going to do the best we can on a weekly basis because you see the smiles on our face. We're having fun with this, and we hope you're having fun watching and listening however you may be. Gino, thank you so much for coming on. Real quick, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of fun. That's what G Said podcast is. Every week I'll have usually 2 episodes that come out each week, and I'll talk about all the different sports, lots of wrestling, but on every episode, there's always horse racing. And what I usually do is I usually give like 2 days worth of horse racing on each episode. So I'll have one that'll talk like Thursday, Friday, and then I'll have another one that'll talk some plays from Saturday, Sunday. So if you're a horse racing fan and that's what you want, you'll get that. If you're a sports fan, you'll get all sorts of stuff. I just did a full NFL draft recap, every team over 2 hours, where we went through all the picks. We did a baseball preview just last week. I'm recapping the Last Dance documentary, which is awesome, that Bulls documentary on ESPN. So just anything that's going on on in the world of sports, pop culture. I'm going to be talking about it there. Really appreciate you guys having me on. It was a blast. I look forward to it again. JD, we got to bring you on and talk a little wrestling and a little racing. And if you're looking for a binge show that I just finished, Netflix, Outer Banks. Throw that one on. It's kind of
I've heard that's good.
New age kind of Goonies-ish show where there's a treasure hunt, a lot of it's a lot of fun. Just throw it on, give it an episode or two. I think you'll enjoy it. So Outer Banks, check that one out.
Gino Buccola, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we recap WrestleMania 8. That podcast will be up shortly on his platforms. Shout out to Joey Cleveland, one of our mutual friends as well, for some pretty awesome theme music, I got to tell you. And I have it on good authority, Gino, that you may or may not have that as your ringtone.
It's what wakes me. It's my alarm. It wakes me up every day.
Hey, if I had a song written about me, I would have it playing nonstop as I walked around. So I am in no position to make judgments. But at any rate, Gino, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we can make some money at Oaklawn this Saturday.
Let's do it. Let's make that money this weekend. Thanks, JD. Andrew, look forward to talking to you guys soon.
It was our pleasure. JD, would you like to give the honors, since you have been putting up with all of the technical stuff that's been coming from my end, all of the graphics that worked without a hitch this time, as well as putting up the incredibly fun, somewhat brutal segment that we had at the outset of the show, reliving what may well be one of the worst beats of my handicapping career because of all of your efforts, because of everything that you do on a consistent basis. And I say this smiling, but I'm completely serious. For everything that you do, for everything that you will do with this show, JD, catchphrase, take us home.
Stay off the beaches. Good night, everybody.
Take it easy.